Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Ask Shane Anything. The show happens because some of you guys are pledging at $7 or more per month at patreon.com/sifted. That is the Ask Shane tier, and because so many of you guys have selected that tier, we keep doing this show. Now, we do need questions for this show. We had just enough to do this week's episode, so please head over to sifted.net. In the header, there's a link there where you can click on it and go to Ask Me Questions. And again, you can ask me about anything. It doesn't have to be about games. I've lived a pretty crazy life, and I think I have at least a unique perspective on most things, so feel free to fire away. Ask me whatever you want. Let's get straight to the questions. Okay, first this week we have a question from Derek D111. Hi Shane, I have a small question about YouTube and ads. Do you get to choose whether or not to show ads during your videos? I'm a patron, so I always watch Sifted content ad-free, so I understand the lack of commercials in that case. But there are other videos that I watch on there that I am not paying for that have one or no ads, and others with ads every few minutes. What's the deal? Well, you've picked up on one thing, and one thing is that we do not run ads on our content for our patrons, at least during the exclusivity period for our content. So generally how it works, and I'm surprised you don't know anything about YouTube, but honestly, probably most people are like you because people don't work on the internet like I do. So typically how YouTube works is, yes, you have total control over the ads that you run, although total control is probably a misnomer. You're supposed to have total control over where the ads go in your videos. So basically there's an interface inside YouTube where you can just go and select the exact time code where you want to place ads. Now the thing is, YouTube does not always run the ads at those places, and sometimes it tries to insert them on its own in places. And we try, when we set those, to create breaks where, say I'm putting ads in game face, like in between topics, like we always try to put an ad before a new topic starts, things like that. Now generally, with our content, game face in particular, we will never place an ad more than every 10 minutes. And generally that's how it works. Every 10 to 15 minutes there's an ad, and that'll change depending on the show. If there's a natural break, sometimes we'll let it go a little bit further, like if it's hit the 10-minute mark and 2 minutes later we start a new topic, then we'll let it go to 12 minutes. So you're supposed to be able to put the ads wherever you want them. However, they don't always run. There's a lot of times where YouTube is like, nope, we're not going to let you run as many ads as you have inserted into this video. They say it's because they know what's going to keep people from watching the show. I don't know. I think I should have total control over my ads, and then if people don't like it, they can just not watch the show if they think there are too many ads. I feel like I should be in control of that. Now, there's a lot that goes into what we do with ads. Like I said, while content is exclusive to our patrons during that whatever period we have for that specific video, there are no ads. Now, we do run ads eventually in the same version of that video because we already had traffic going to that video for SEO purposes. We don't want to launch a brand new video. So the same version on YouTube that you watch while it's ad free, eventually we go back and we add ads to that same version. And a lot of times you guys have put comments underneath there. We want all our comments in one video as well, so it makes sense for us to do it that way. So the thing with YouTube ads is that it makes no sense to me at all. So we had for years had a 4-day delay on Game Face before we put it up for free on YouTube. And about a month and a half ago, I decided to cut that to 3 days for the video version and leave the audio version at a 4-day delay for our patrons. Since we have moved it to Saturday, it's been awful. I just got our first ad payment from YouTube since I made that change. Our ad revenue went down like 30%. It's insane. The other thing that's happened recently is I wanted to add our podcast feeds to YouTube Music to make sure that, people who only use YouTube Music and don't use the video version of YouTube still had access to our content. And that turned into a complete disaster. So it started adding all these files to our YouTube channel. And in all honesty, a lot of people were like, I'm out. And we lost some subscribers during the 2 days while they were adding all those podcasts. But I think what's happened is, and the big problem here is that YouTube is not transparent. It doesn't tell you how things work. So what I think has happened is that people have started listening to the audio-only version of our shows, and I don't think that we get as much ad revenue for those. And I think that has actually hurt our ad revenue. But again, YouTube will not tell you how it works. The other problem we have is that, as it turns out, there was already an audio version of Game Face that was on YouTube Music. I didn't need to add the Game Face audio-only podcast feed to YouTube. It was already creating its own audio versions of the show. But I added that podcast feed anyway, not knowing. And now the problem is I want to get rid of that audio-only version of Game Face and just go back to the way it was with the video version and letting YouTube convert that into an audio-only version. However, it basically won't let you do that because it's now tied the audio-only version of Game Face to the video version of Game Face. So I tried to delete the audio-only feed, and it tried to delete all of Game Face off of YouTube. It is a nightmare. There's nobody to talk to at YouTube. The service, if you try to go in and chat with them, no one ever replies. It's awful. It's hard to believe there's a business that makes that kind of money that literally has no accountability and no transparency. It sucks, in all honesty. So I'm stuck in this position now where we're going back to the 4-day delay. So if you're a patron, you're actually getting more value now. We're going to go back to the video version not going up until Sunday. We had bumped it to Saturday. We've lost money. We've also lost subscribers. We've also lost patrons, like a lot of them, since we made that change. So I don't know if people were, if it just happened because they just wanted to leave. I don't know if it was oh wow, I'm only getting 3 days exclusivity now on this. Well, I can wait and I just won't pay and I'll just watch it on Saturday. I don't know. Again, there's no way to know because YouTube won't tell you. But it's just been very, very frustrating. It is, I don't know what is up with our YouTube channel. I don't think you will ever find a YouTube channel that updates as regularly as ours, that has content at the quality of ours, meaning we're not just standing like I'm doing right now, just sitting in front of a webcam. Our content has high production values and not have the channel grow. It is mind-boggling. I don't even know how it's possible. I go on YouTube, I watch some stupid video of some dude sitting there picking his nose on a webcam, and it's done 8,000 views. It is insane. It's I don't know. It really feels like we're being throttled somehow. I don't know. My frustration with YouTube knows no bounds. So if you're frustrated with it, take however you're feeling and multiply it by 8,000. And you may get into the same galaxy that I'm sitting in with YouTube right now. I really don't know what the rhyme or reason is. I mean, I don't think anybody does. However, for whatever reason, it's worked out really well for some other people. It's worked out absolutely terrible for us. So please like the stuff on YouTube if you can. Leave a comment. I feel like we're fighting against somebody at YouTube that hates us. It's really weird, man. So anyway, you're confused about YouTube. I've worked on it for 15 years now. I'm still confused on it. I can't believe YouTube is such a successful business with a lack of transparency. Ugh. Okay, our next question comes from Liberal Hack. You've mentioned you're a big Civ fan. What changes or additions would you like to see to the game with Civilization 7 having just been announced? One change I liked about 6 was the districts making your city take up more than one tile. Makes them feel more like actual cities. On the other hand, the AI just doesn't seem to be able to handle the one unit per tile mechanic when it comes to combat. Okay, Liberal Hack, I agree with you. I also liked that change. I didn't see too many problems with the combat, with how they changed up the tiles. That was something that they added that I didn't really ask for. We talked about Civ during Not E3. I talked about it with Marcus and Pactor. And then mentioned it in passing with Matt on this last week's episode of Game Face. And I really think what we've come to at this point is it's really hard to figure out what needs to be added to Civ. I think it was Matt and I who said, you know what, maybe this just needs to become a platform that's just updated in perpetuity. It's really hard to think of, new features that need to be added to Civ. We're on the 7th iteration. The developers are really good at figuring out what the fans want. Civ 6 was pretty freaking awesome, man. I'm pretty happy with it. I think if I had one complaint, I wish there was some more flexibility in how to play Civ in general. I wish that I could just jump to any time period that I wanted and maybe set up very specific scenarios. And it would be cool if maybe you could share that with people. You could go to my games and say, you're a big fan just like I am. I've created this scenario where you start in the industrial age, but you have these other things that haven't happened yet and you need them to happen. And then you come in and try to beat it, and you can share it through this leaderboard or whatever. I think that would be kind of cool. I just think more flexibility in how you want to play it in general. Instead of having to start over every time where the game wants you to start, I think it would be great to be able to just jump to the space age and just get to play through that stuff. A lot of people, It doesn't really affect me that much because eventually I get there because I'm a big fan. But there's a lot of people who play Civ who will never get to the space age. Like, they just never will. They will never play it long enough. And I think maybe people just getting a little taste of that. Even if, like, let's say you boot up the game, and there's just a very short campaign that you play in the space age. So people can get a taste of it, and maybe that motivates people to make it to the space age on their own. So that's pretty much it, man. Like, Civ 6 is pretty damn good. I've been playing it for many years. I still enjoy it. Every once in a while when we have a lull in the industry and there's not a lot to play, like right now, I'll boot it up and give it a go. In fact, I do think I'm going to boot it up because I just got my new PC running and I want to see how that game looks and runs on my new PC. So anyway, we are kindred spirits. We both love Civ, but I think you'll agree with me that, man, the game is so good, it's really hard to find things that they should improve on. Okay, next up, we have a question from Jalen. During your Not E3 coverage, you mentioned that you worked with Jeff Keighley for 10 years, and since you left Game Trailers, it's as if you died. I've had multiple experiences like this in my career, and it's sad. I guess I'm not really that fun to hang out with. Oh, man. Fortunately, I still have a few friends from previous jobs, but it definitely feels like people in general don't want to be friends if they can't get something from me. So you didn't really ask a question there, but I think you just want me to maybe expand a little bit, taking your experiences into context when I answer it. So I guess the first thing I would say here is I'm like you. You know, I still have friends from pretty much every job that I had. And I'll say this too, like the people who continued to be my friend after I left someplace were not the people that I thought would be. They weren't my closest coworkers. They weren't the people that I fought to get raises as their supervisor. Like, you think as a manager, when you go out of your way to help people, that they'll remember it. They don't. Because and look, this is all just conjecture on my part after working in corporate America for a really long time. I feel like a lot of people just think that they should have had your job as a supervisor. And I think back to when I wasn't a boss and I was an underling. Did I think that way? Maybe a little bit here and there. There's a couple times I had bosses where I was like, dude, I'm way better than you. Like, I should have your job. I think a lot of people can maybe relate to that. If you're kind of, foot in the door job, and you're doing a really good job, you're killing it at that foot in the door job. I think everybody's like, man, I'm probably ready for a promotion or whatever. And so I kind of get that angle of it, but it's been surprising to see the people who I worked with at Tech TV and at G4 and at Game Trailers and at MTV and at Spike, who still, like, when I post, something on Facebook, they still respond or they like it, or on my birthday on Facebook, they still wish me a happy birthday. Like, I think that's going to be devastating for everyone, Jalen. I think it just is. It's hard. You spend so much time with somebody. And in the case of Jeff and I, like, our relationship was, I thought, amazing. Like, we did some amazing stuff together. Like, when I was working at G4, he was kind of I wouldn't say he was a fringe guy, but he wasn't like a full-time G4 employee. He came in and did his show, and then he would leave. And he didn't hang out much. You didn't see him around the office very much. He was just talent, basically. But I always made sure. I was embedded in the whole network. I was the editorial director for the network. So I had my hands in, like, every show. And I always went out of my way to make sure that Jeff was included in stuff. Like, people would be like, we don't need Jeff. He's just, freelance talent or whatever. I'd be like, no, he's an important part of our network. You need to get him in on this. I did a series of pre-show, basically sponsored episodes for Race to G. It's called Race to G4ia. G4ia was G4's annual award show, like the Game Awards. It was like the first of Game Awards, really. And it was before the Game Awards on Spike TV. It was the precursor to all video game award shows. One year, I was tasked with doing the promotional, like, pre-show stuff before the actual show happened. And I did, like, a 4-part series called Race to G4ia, where all the talent, it was like this thing where they're all racing to get to G4ia. And I made sure that he was included in that. And again, a lot of people would look over Jeff at G4. I did that. Then I go to Game Trailers, and he and I worked, like, hand in hand. Like, I don't want to get into all this again. We worked on exclusives together every week. I was helping his show. He was helping the website. It was a symbiotic relationship. And overall, we were just friends. Like, we would text each other after work about not work-related stuff, about not games, about bands we're going to see, concerts that are coming up, people in the industry that we're friends with, mutual friends with. And literally, the day I left there, it pretty much just ended. He did invite me. They tried to keep doing bonus round for a little while after I had left there, and before everything was just basically canceled. And he did invite me to do, like, a round of bonus round episodes, which was great. But that was it. After that, it was literally like I had died. And to your point, Jalen, I think a lot of it just really is that they just can't get anything out of you anymore. The crazy part is he should have worked with us because we had set up and the first ever really, paid gaming website where we could gate people. They needed to pay to access the content. If he were smart, he would have partnered with us to create pay-per-view for all his stuff. Imagine if he just charged $1 to watch the Game Awards and use Sifted as the conduit, because we already had everything set up and ready to go. Summer Game Fest, if you paid $1 or $2 to watch that, or if you paid $1 or $2 to watch his Gamescom stuff, if he truly is hitting the numbers that he's hitting, that he claims he's hitting, he'd be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He never even bothered to send out a tweet to say, hey, my buddy's website just launched that he's killing himself on. Maybe you should go check it out. So I agree with you. I think a lot of it is like people deal with people at work because they have to, and maybe they don't like you or me. They act like they do while you're at work, but maybe they really don't. But I think mostly they just are indifferent about it, and they just don't, they're not interested in making friends at work. They just look at people at work as ways to get ahead, or people who are keeping them from getting ahead. Now, there are exceptions, and those are the people that you're still talking to. Those are the people that are still wishing me a happy birthday on Facebook, and that is kind of refreshing. You don't sometimes realize the impression that you've made on people until you leave, and those people stay connected with you. And so I try to appreciate the people who have surprised me just as much as I'm disappointed in the people who bailed on me. Okay, our last question for this episode comes from Bachby. Is there a silver lining with all the layoffs? Oh boy. Once the dust has settled, there will be tons of developers out of jobs, but could they band together to make their own studios? Do you think there is a chance in 3 to 5 years we will see a slew of quality AA games? How could they get enough funding to eventually make big budget games again? Well, the obvious answer, and you answered this yourself, but I cut it out of the question to make it fit into our graphics, is that make a game that goes crazy. Like it's not all that far-fetched. Look at a game like Pal World. It's one of the best-selling games of this year. And I don't think the developers or the publisher of that game had any clue that it was going to be as big as it is. So there is the chance of just having that hit, but you're right. I think that's copping out in this question. I guess what I would say is that it's going to be really difficult. Now, it is cool to see that there are games that are made by one person or like a handful of people. And even Jeff Keighley, to go back to the last question, kind of focused on that stuff in his presentation. He's like, hey, these are games being made by a couple people, and hopefully that gives them more exposure. I hope it works for them. The one thing that you can do is try to find an idea that's unique and do a good job executing on it, but that doesn't always guarantee success. And I think the big problem here is that a lot of the people that you're talking about were the underlings. They didn't get paid all that much. And I can just tell you, if you try to start a company and you're not rich, it's really hard. I did it. I made a huge sacrifice. I mean, I'm not going to get into specifics, but man, I took a huge risk to do this. I mean, for the amount of money that I had in the bank that I spent to launch Sifted, like, spend the money to build it with Brent, and then all the gear and the TriCaster that was like $10,000 when I bought it. Like, I took a huge risk. And thank heavens we have enough people like you guys to at least, we're breaking even and surviving. But it could have very easily gone the wrong way, and I could have been out tens of thousands of dollars just flushed down the toilet. So when you're talking about game developers who have made, if they're lucky, and they're senior, and that doesn't seem to be the people who were laid off, but let's just say that they were, those people, even if they're making $100K, they can't really afford to launch a company, man. Think about it. It adds up so fast. Think about every employee you have. That money's got to come from somewhere, man. It adds up fast. If you've never run a business, you don't understand. And you will never understand until you have to make payroll every month. And you're like, man, wow. Everybody's getting paid but me. I mean, there have been times with Sifted where I wrote checks for everybody else and I made nothing. So it's tough. If you're only making six figures, $100K a year, you've maybe saved up. If you're living in California, maybe you saved up, some money to fruitfully try to buy a house, which is never going to happen if you're only making $100K here. So maybe you have a little nest egg. You can't afford to drop that and then try to hire people and band together and make games. So unless you have one of the executives from your studio also lose their job and they're like, you know what, I'm worth $20 million. Let's do it. That's really the only way it's going to work, man. Unfortunately, most of those people are going to need to try to find jobs somewhere else. And instead of it making better AA games, I think what it's going to do is it's going to result in better AAA and big budget games, because now these studios have the pick of the litter, man. There are a lot of good people that were let go during all these layoffs. And now if you're a studio and you're sitting there, even if you're like a Sony Santa Monica that makes God of War, like, you're looking at your staff right now and you're like, who can we upgrade on here? Because there are 12,000 people out there looking for jobs, and we can probably upgrade a couple of our artists, a couple of our level designers, a couple of our writers, because there's better people out there on the job market right now. So I don't see it bumping up AA development. It's going to be, and even like the big wigs who lose their jobs and have 20 million in the bank or whatever, are they going to want to take the risk? It takes a special person to do it. Just trust me, it does. It takes guts and a little bit of stupidity, in all honesty, to start your own company, particularly if you don't have a ton of money. But even if you do, it's still a big risk. So I don't see it being this boon for AA games in 3 to 5 years. I think all AAA and big budget games will be better in like 2 years, once all this talent starts getting disseminated into the workforce. So I know that probably isn't the answer that you want to hear, but I mean, I think most people want to hear that the big budget games are going to get better, and not that there's going to be this groundswell of AA games pushing the envelope towards AAA or whatever. And I know all those designations are ridiculous, but it's what we use, and so it's the nomenclature of the industry, and that's what I'll use. So yeah, I don't think that's what's going to happen, but I do think ultimately the quality of pretty much every big budget game is going to improve. Okay, that's it for this week's edition of Ask Shane Anything. A big thanks to all you guys who are pledging at that Ask Shane tier at $7 or more, but a big thanks to everybody, even the people who are just giving us $1 a month. It all makes a difference for us. I can't tell you how great it feels to see our patron number go up, and how crushing it feels to see the patron number go down. It's just an emotional roller coaster I really didn't think I was going to be on when I launched Sifted, but thanks to you guys, it's a roller coaster that I'm still riding, and we're all still riding. So thanks to everybody who supports us in any way. We'll see you for Game Face on Tuesday.